Hi, I'm Jason with Ballistic Tools, and I'm going to talk to you today about the difference between the Wilson gauge and a Sheridan gauge. Both gauges will gauge reloading brass after it's been sized to tell you the headspace of the brass, that is, how far back the shoulder has been pushed down on the brass. And that's important to make sure that the brass when loaded ammunition will chamber correctly. The Wilson gauge is designed to measure only the headspace and the trim length, and it does this with being slightly oversized cut. So you can see on the back, it's measuring the headspace of this brass, and then on this side, it measures the trim length of the brass. This piece of brass, you've probably noticed, is actually damaged. It's got a little ding on it there. And that's the main difference with the Sheridan gauge. It's cut like a tight chamber. This is a slotted Sheridan gauge. You can also get them without the slot. The slot just lets you see where everything's going to sit. In a Sheridan gauge, a piece of brass that's out of spec in some way will not go in all the way. It's hanging up. You see it's not resting on the shoulder, so you know that there's something else wrong with this brass. Sometimes damage is more subtle than just a little nick. Sometimes the base is bulged out, and the Sheridan gauge will tell you about that. The unfortunate side effect of this is that you can't measure the headspace of this damaged brass, but if the brass is damaged, you probably don't want to use it in the first place. The other advantage of the Sheridan gauge is that you can use it with loaded ammunition. I don't have a loaded piece of ammunition handy, but you can see with this bullet, the end of it here is actually cut like a chamber throat. So the bullet will sit in the chamber throat, and you can tell if the bullet is seated out too far, the brass is not going to seat all the way in there. So that's the advantage of a Sheridan gauge. It lets you do loaded ammo, it lets you gauge the entire length of the brass, and it'll tell you about other problems that a Wilson gauge may not tell you about.